Well, nice to have you here. One of the things about higher education is the thinking that as we go higher, we require more and more resources. And the thinking is that financial resources would normally do whatever it's supposed to do. But generally now there is a more recent thinking now that there's something like social capital where people can come together and create value which could not be seen individually. So the social capital and intellectual capital is now becoming more and more important. Intellectual capital to do things together, not as just individual merit, but collectively. So in this respect, if we look at higher education as a governance issue, it looks like the traditional methods of financing and regulation and control seem to be out of place, out of sync with what's happening. So in the opening, we will have a few more questions, but if you could just tell us, Dr. Habeeb, what you think would be appropriate in this context, especially with your experience with medical field and MCI is always in the news for the right and the wrong reasons. What would be your view? Is it really able to handle the kind of complexity that we find today in the medical field in the country?
One point you have stressed is the financial resource and constraints a part of the higher education. Basically, if you look to education as such, it can be divided into 2-3 segments. First, the basic education, the primary and high school.
That's right.
Then the college levels, then universities where you go for advanced studies and then go for research.
That's right.
So these kind of fragmentation or segmentation goes according to ages.
Correct.
So high school and college is compulsory. If suppose you go to college level, then you go to higher education, to postgraduates and then research. There your resource is very much valid.
Correct.
Because at that time you require financial resources, human resources, applied focus knowledge, all the things come together and your financial constraint or resource constraint is very much seen in that. So that's why we find this higher education is well developed in developed countries. Whereas in the undeveloped or being developed countries, we don't find that much quality in the higher education. And even in the higher education also, ultimately what contributes is it is the research which we can bring more results to the applied aspects of knowledge. As the famous author management, Peter Drucker says, we have changed or we are landed from industrial century to the knowledge century.
Correct.
So the knowledge is the new resource shifting from the finance.
Exactly.
So how it is going to an economic system we are yet to know, because we don't know the knowledge economy as such. But it is going to be the new resource. That you could see also the savings of the various knowledge workers, where they called higher educated qualified people. They are working in various parts of the world. They are saving their surplus as part of the economy now.
In management, you talked about management. We talk about lean management. Now, is that something, for instance, we could think about in the medical education? Are we really overemphasizing the financial, while the human capital, which seems to be more valued elsewhere, maybe because we have too much of it? Would it be a right to say we need to marshal this energy in a directed fashion, so that we can get the better value for whatever we spend?
That is true. See, higher education, whenever you go into a professional education, when you go into the scientific field, engineering, medical, nursing, all other areas, that requires a lot of equipments and other resources. It's very expensive. Whereas we go to higher education in the arts level, MA or humanities and all the things, it doesn't require that much resources. So one of the major problems we are facing here is in India particularly, the quality of higher education has not come to the level of Western countries. That is because mainly lack of resources. And most of the higher education system, we are following like colleges or high schools level. It's not so in the Western countries. Highly advanced higher education in the highly resourceful. Government is supporting one side, then public is supporting another side, then social responsibility by the corporate is also there. Pulled together, they put the finance. So surplus creation is not a possible in higher education, which unfortunately is being mistook in India.
Okay. I'd like to address this issue to Dr. Devaraj.
Yes,
in case we say, okay, resources are required, especially in the professional area like medicine and engineering. Now, other fields, I mean, probably as Dr. Habeeb was saying, resources really what we have between our 2 years. So why is it that we have not, for instance, developed in the social science areas, for instance, where we could probably, create a lot of understanding, especially with the traditional knowledge that we claim that we have, which is true at one level. Are we really marshalling this, in the manner in which we really should be doing?
Slowly, we are coming up to the level what you expect, but it takes time. India, as you know, it's a big country and we have a huge population, and majority of the people are not highly educated. Step by step, we are in the process. And I agree that we may not require that much of infrastructure what is required normally in medical and engineering colleges, but still we require some social infrastructure and support from industry and social organization. And it is not only the government that can help us in all this respect, even the private people and social entrepreneurs should enter into this education field, and we must help our youth to come up to the standard what doctor is telling. The same way quality education is to be imparted, and for that we need qualified and competent people. And in India we have so many universities, almost 800 universities, so many autonomous institutions, and all these things will be helping us to develop the people. But as it is, we are finding it is not up to the level when compared to international standard, but slowly we are emerging, and it takes time. And we should encourage people, more and more people to enroll to higher education also. And the total percentage if you take at the international level, our percentage is not up to the mark. I agree that because of the huge population, when you take that, definitely our percentage.
We need to take a break here, sir.
Yes.
We'll come back and we'll carry on the discussion.
When we talk about the quality,
yes,
and since we have a huge population and it's a big country, we cannot have uniform system throughout the country.
Right.
Each university or each region should be given some freedom to develop the syllabus according to the regional requirements, and at the same time people should be enthused to take up. And then of course our education should also be practical oriented. It's not just theoretical or conceptual knowledge alone will not serve the purpose. Definitely people are not coming to education only for the sake of knowledge. They wanted to earn their living by education, and when that is the case, it should be skill oriented. Conceptual knowledge is required, industrial exposure should also be given, and more, not only the teachers should also be involved in education system, and I think then it becomes relevant. And at the same time we must give more and more importance to the research, and I agree that when compared to international level, our teachers becoming researchers comparatively less. Reason is that much of encouragement is not provided to our teachers, and teachers should be enthused, and teachers should be protected, and also they should be encouraged to take up research work. And at the same time more and more students should also become research oriented, and I think then we can fill the gap what is existing now, and it may take some years. Definitely we are in the right path, that's what I feel. And now in this situation my thinking is that only government alone cannot do all these things. It should be clear private public partnership, and all of us should come together and should see that what is relevant, what is needed, and how we can enthuse our youngsters, and see that we will also reach the international standard. That's what I would say.
Dr. Habeeb, talking about this private and public participation, what is your sense about this in the medical field? If you compare the public sector versus the private sector, both in the professional as well as in education. Also, is there a third sector emerging where this kind of cooperation is happening, or if it's not happening, is there some way to promote it, like the cooperative movement? That's neither complete capitalism or runaway capitalism, nor complete government bureaucracy. Is there something in between that is possible in the medical education now?
The medical educational field, if you look into that, there's a lot of problems are there. Now the new MCA is being replaced, some new act and all.
Right.
The government is trying to prepare. A lot of discussion going on, and quality and standardization, etc. is being discussed. Now the thing is, higher education medical field in our past experiences can be done mostly by the government.
Correct.
For example, now All India Institute of Medical Science was started by the government.
Right.
The whole idea was to promote higher education, postgraduates mostly there.
Right.
Then you got Nimans there in Bangalore.
Right.
Tata Institute is a private now. Started, but now government plus I think a lot of aids are there.
Yes.
So all this higher level of education, which cost a lot of resources, finance as well as other resources, required combined participation of government plus public together, private public participation. Medical field especially should go more on research.
Correct.
Now the MC is very keen on research on medical education, which was not there earlier.
Okay.
2-3 decades back, there was no such thing as the research. Now they very much on research.
Okay.
So continuous research alone will bring our education higher level.
Correct.
Another thing which when you talk education as such is a new resource. What it could bring as a part of economy, according to Peter Drucker, what he said. We have our own experience. For example, now if you look to our Indian population, which is quite big, and to advantage we had with the British rule, all colonized, and what are the problems we had earlier, but we had some advantage. What they contributed to India, one is English language, another is the railway network where you could integrate together. Because of the English language, we are able to assimilate ourselves to the modern development, which is all in English. And if you see the early government, which gave a lot of importance for education, and because we got such a large population in India, and educated people found a better survival existence outside India. And many of the educated people are in the Western countries. You take UNO, WHO, or private organizations, corporate level,
head of Google,
and all Indians.
Thanks
to the education system what he started here.
So something is right with our education system.
Education system started here. So it should be further developed into a quality, which they get once they go there. Once we all slowly, as you said, we are coming to that level. I am sure in coming decades, India will be a dominating country because of our knowledge, education, and English put together.
Talking about Dr. Devaraj, talking about this, the idea that when people go from here, they seem to work in a different environment and succeed. So ultimately, there's nothing wrong with the raw material as such, but there seems to be something not quite right about the ecology that we are creating for our youngsters. For people to whether it is in organizations or whether it's in universities. So one of the things that now people are talking about is greater autonomy.
So some of the policy makers are also commenting like that. In the world, top 500 university if you take, in all top 500 universities, our professors are there. When you consider the assessment, Indian universities, one or two only will be coming within the 500 list. Indian Institute of Science. And one more may come, but it is not there. Why? One of the reasons, the system of education here, it is a mass education, there it is a class education. And the second thing is that the encouragement given to the research by the industry or the government or the social organization is not up to the mark. And research oriented education means we will have to give a lot of other social infrastructure.
Right.
And we are always thinking, is it necessary, is it worth investing that much on that particular equipments, what is outcome, and of course we have limited resources, and because of this problem will be there. And if you are able to provide that much of infrastructure, and if you are able to reduce that not the total number of participants, but if you develop such a number of institutions where it can accommodate a huge population,
Yes.
and a large number of quality teachers, then probably we can also compete with them. And that's how it should be taken. And unfortunately in India what is happening, even the government is always thinking of controlling, regulating and all that. Unnecessary regulatory bodies are interfering, and they don't encourage, promote. On the other hand, they bring some more restrictions. The result of that, you see, all that corruption takes place. Best thing is, we must create an environment in which all will contribute, all will be the winners, and private entrepreneurs, when they enter into this education field, that's what I said, the private public partnership, and they should also have the right to breathe properly, and that type of environment we have to create. And when you create that, then I think even the teachers will contribute better, and students will also be motivated, and the society will also come forward, because here is an institution which gives something back to the society. In that way, when people start thinking, I think we can change the atmosphere, we can compete with the international level. And this is what exactly is required in Indian condition. That's what I have observed.
Okay.
Not only in India, even when we go abroad, we find this type of situation. And everyone is asking us, why say so much people and so many universities, why it is not coming up to the international standard? Your professors are here and they are doing extremely well, and all well-known professors in all field. You take medical or engineering or social sciences or management or law. Our professors are really appreciated and admired, and they contribute a lot in that area.
We'll have to
But
take a
not-
break here.
Yes.
Dr. Devaraj, you mentioned about controls versus greater autonomy.
Yes.
But having said that, it's very important to give autonomy. Are we really ready for it as a group, as a community of people in our country?
Definitely. We should be ready,
Yeah.
and we should adopt such a situation so that we are free to start new courses, new syllabus according to the regional requirements, which will make our students comfortable and confident when they come out from the universities. And people should not say that he is a graduate or a postgraduate researcher, he is not useful to the society like that. Such situation should not emerge, and that is possible only when they support the autonomy and freedom to think and introduce some changes in the syllabus. It's not say we must have only this subject, that subject and all that. Cafeteria system should be followed, and students should be given freedom to choose some of the subjects of his choice, and there he can excel. It is very important. Now what happens here, if you take up any course, even in a general education, he has to study some subjects which is very hard to crack, and such subject also he will be forced, and the result of that he become little bit depressed also sometimes, and higher education may not be taken that interestingly because of such a hurdles. And of course now UGC, MHRD have given some freedom to have such a cafeteria system in some of the universities, and that should continue in all the universities. Students should be free to learn any subject of his choice, and he should excel, and at the same time it should be relevant to the condition prevalent in a particular region.
What you're saying is very interesting, because one of the things that observers have noticed is that in the IT sector, I mean, we have done reasonably well, you know, world over. So they say there were no controls initially, because there was no way to control the university, because universities were not offering these courses. So there were the private sector institutions came up with this enormous franchising system, which grew at like, you know, 50-80% annual growth rate. So that growth was there during the initial phase. So perhaps it would be right to hypothesize that India could, you know, manage this kind of huge potential, releasing this potential, because there were no excessive controls put on the sector. So perhaps, you know, with MCI, what will be the, I mean, I'm coming back to Dr. Habeeb, Medical Council. What is it because they didn't have the freedoms, or they did not use the freedoms in a proper manner? Because when we read newspapers, we get the impression that yes, MCI was an independent body with its own autonomy, but that autonomy, perhaps, you know, at least from all the newspaper reports that we get, it was probably they didn't have it in them to self-regulate in a responsible manner. What's your view on that, sir?
See, one of the things what we have, as I said earlier, on advantage we had from the British colonization, etc. We learn English language, but the disadvantage we had is we followed many of the system which was become obstinate. The civil system itself, at that time they wanted for their benefit, our graduation course, etc., etc. We have failed to make a tailor-made educational system for our Indian population. If you take the medical field as such, you know, we are following a typical of Western system of MBBS and then post-graduation, etc., etc. And they are asking all these qualified people to go to the villages, which they have never had a chance of village at all in their courses during the program, and none of them wants to go there. So the quacks come up in the villages there, and they want to increase the quacks with the other thing. That's why the MC has got a lot of new thinking process, Ayush and other programs and all. So what we have failed in education from the medical point of view or health point of view is we are not able to design a course required to the Indian population. I always said in the many university programs there, you must start a separate rural program for the villages in healthcare. And rural doc, something like a Vaidya system of tradition which was prevailing earlier days. Meant to have some mostly on the health promotion, disease prevention, environmental sanitation, emergency care, etc., etc. A new course exclusively in the villages, not to mix it with the medical colleges. And that should be done only in the village area with this environment. If you make a course like that, perhaps that would meet the needs of our people there. Now what you are trying to do, postgraduates, qualified specialists and all the things to go to the village, what they can do. So we have to rethink on that level to tailor make education to the needs of the community as far as healthcare is concerned.
There's a mismatch between...
The thinking process has to go in this. I think I have talked in several occasions. Manipal also I talked, or with my parent institution, NAP University also, we had some talk there, here in Mangalore. Let us see who takes up the initiative and have a break there. That can give a new insight to the education as far as healthcare is concerned. Similarly, also in other area we find like, you know, graduation, commerce and all old courses. We may have to, as you said, you know, the new area what is relevant to the situation now. IT industry is totally different from graduations.
Thank you very much.
Thank
you, sir.
Thank you.